So I had actually talked to some people earlier, and I said, why doesn't Cynthia Nixon back Ocasio-Cortez and Ocasio-Cortez back Cynthia Nixon? Why hasn't that happened yet? There seems like it could be beneficial to both. And somebody said, well, she can't take on everybody at once, and if she does, she's just going to get annihilated. And then shortly before the election, you decide, I am going to take on everybody at once.
Right. Alexandria and I needed to talk to each other, and the campaigns were talking to each other, and then the timing that we were worked out was the one.
Right, but what about that analysis and the Working Families Party actually had that calculus. They endorsed Joe Crowley on the reasoning that we will get destroyed if we go too far, too fast. So what does tonight say about that thinking?
Tonight says that when you offer voters a choice, when you offer them a more progressive choice, when you offer someone who is a woman who is speaking directly to them, who isn't owned by corporate interests, and who is really speaking out on the issues that progressives care about and that we're so wanting here in New York, like single-payer health care, like 100% transition to a renewable energy, like calling out ICE, voters respond. Voters respond.
So I think Alexandria is going to take a little joyride and get some fresh air. She'll be back later, she said. Did you have just among friends a guess as to how tonight was going, and how did the results conform with what you thought was going to happen?
Of course, it's what we all hoped for, but I am surprised that it was so quick. It was so decisive, and it was so quick. There weren't hours of watching it eke out. It's really decisive. The people have spoken.
So you thought it was going to be at least close?
I thought that we wouldn't have a result so quickly.
The fact that it was a landslide.
Right. It was an actual landslide.
And that is a beautiful thing.
So Nancy Pelosi just put out a 3 or 4 paragraph statement praising Joe Crowley all the way through, and at the very end it says, I congratulate Ocasio-Cortez on her win. How do you think that this bodes for her in the House?
I wouldn't like to venture a guess, but I do think it's important that we have a Democratic Party that really responds, that really meets voters where we are. We have a situation right now, not only in New York State, but across this country, where voters are actually ahead, in many cases, of elected leaders. And I think our leaders, in some cases, need to play catch-up. People are really hungry for change, and Democrats are really hungry to oppose Trump, and not just with rhetoric, not just with shaming of him and scolding of him, but with actual policies. We need to give people something not just to vote against, we need to give people something to turn out to the polls and vote for, and that's what Alexandria showed today, is that when you give people that, they will show up.
Last question. One thing I had heard is that she was having a hard time hiring some of the staff that you need at the higher level to run some of these races, because there's a very much, you won't work in this town again if you do that kind of attitude. You take on the machine, you won't work in this town again. Have you had that problem, and do you think that this opens up what kind of career paths for people to say, you know what, maybe the emperor doesn't have as many clothes as I thought that he did? But have you had that problem of, I'd love to support you, but I can't?
I think it's very scary for people to come work on a campaign for someone who is opposing Andrew Cuomo. I think it's scary also for people who are traditional Democratic donors to donate to the campaign. The governor takes note of everything.
Yes, he does. Thanks so much for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you.